All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Research Skills 101 workshop today, brought to you by the Mary and Jeff Bell Library. I've been chatting with you a little bit. My name is Emily Sartorius. I'm the instructional design librarian here at the Bell Library, and I'll be the host for today. So you see my email there. Of course, we start recording and my voice goes. It's fine. You see my email there. And you can always contact me if you have any questions about this presentation, any questions about the skills we're going to practice today. But I want to introduce myself to you before we get started. And we also have a lovely moderator here with us today, Patricia Hernandez or Trisha Hernandez, who will be here to watch your questions, make sure that your questions get answered, as well as to launch the different polls that we have in the presentation and to share the different links that we'll be sharing throughout. We want to welcome you to our presentation today, and we want to thank you for attending. Speaking of links, I know I said Trisha is going to be sharing different links throughout the chat, and I know many of you are here because you're from a first-year learning community, and so you might be wondering, how am I going to get credit for attending this session? Towards the end of our time together, you'll have an opportunity to practice finding information using the library website on your own. At that time, we'll be sharing a link to a form that will help guide you in your practice of finding information. In that form, you'll be asked to find one relevant resource based on the research question that we give you, 2, explain how you found that resource, 3, explain why that resource is relevant, and 4, place that resource on the information timeline. Once you answer those questions, you're going to click submit on the form, and then it will email you your responses. So what you typed in, you'll get in your email as well. And that email is what you will share with your instructors. So save that email and share it with your instructors, however they request that information be shared with them. And so that's how you'll get credit, is filling out the form, pressing submit, saving the email, and sharing the email with your instructors. And we want to let you know that the session, we mentioned it before, is recorded. We do request that you leave your audio muted and your cameras off, but we still ask that you participate to the best of your abilities. The closer you listen now and the more you participate in the polls and in the different activities, the easier that final exercise or form will be. We have about 50 minutes together today, so our goal is that for this time, at the end of this time together, you will be able to find one relevant resource based on a research question. You'll be able to justify why the resource is relevant and place that source on the information timeline. In order to accomplish all 3 of these goals, we're going to work in reverse order, first talking about the information timeline and then talking about relevance. We'll do a quick demo on how to find specific resources in the library quick search, and then we'll have an opportunity for you to practice on your own using that form we mentioned earlier. To get us started, I wanted to ask a question. How are you feeling about starting your first college research project or your college research project? Maybe it's not your first, but your college research project that you have coming up. Are you feeling A, unsure, like this dog typing the paper, B, overwhelmed, C, confident, D, E, excited, or F for fine? Our moderator is going to launch a poll now. If you're unable to participate in the poll, you can also share in the chat how you're feeling. But also notice that you can answer multiple responses, because we might have mixed feelings about how we're feeling about our research paper, our research project that we're doing. We might be feeling a little excited, but mainly unsure. We might be feeling fine and overwhelmed at the same time. So we just wanted to point that out, that you might be feeling mixed emotions right now, and that's totally valid. All right, I'm seeing lots of unsures, lots of overwhelms. A few people are feeling fine, like fires coming around them. Okay, our moderator is going to share the results now so you all can see that a lot of us are feeling the same. We're feeling unsure, overwhelmed, fine. And so our hope is that if you are feeling unsure and overwhelmed right now in this presentation, by the end of our presentation today, you're going to feel a little bit more confident and a little bit more excited to do your research, because you'll have the tools to do so. You might also be feeling a little overwhelmed because you're seeing a bunch of these unfamiliar words being thrown at you, such as scholarly, peer-reviewed, news articles, magazines, blog posts, social media, journals, so on, what to use, what not to use for your research projects. And you might be wondering, what does all this mean? And that's what we're here today to talk to you about. We want to demystify what some of these words are and to make it easier for you to understand and find the information that you need to complete your projects. And to do this, we're going to start by breaking down the information timeline. The information timeline is the process in which information is created and how it progresses through time. So there's typically an event that happens, and once the event happens, the information timeline begins. People will first post about it on social media. Shortly after that, we'll begin to see news reports about the event. Then after a week or so of that, you'll start to see magazines and blogs talking about the event. Then we have scholarly and peer-reviewed journal articles that start to appear a few months later, and we'll talk about why a little bit later in this presentation. And finally, books take a year or so longer to be written because they go through so many editorial steps, and it goes through so many hands to produce that final book or that final product. And so we'll go into more detail about each of these steps later. But this is the information timeline. And you might be thinking, Emily, this is great, but it's hard to understand without an example. So let me give you my favorite example to share, which is Grumpy Cat. I warmed you up with some memes earlier, and this is why. We're going to use Grumpy Cat as our example to walk through the information timeline. We're also going to share a link in the chat now to a research guide where you can follow along with Grumpy Cat's process through the information timeline. So the first step for the information timeline, as we mentioned, is social media. Social media posts start appearing within minutes, seconds, and hours after an event, and anyone can post to social media, so the author can be anyone, which means they can be credible and not credible. It can be beneficial to look at social media posts during our research time because it allows us to see different perspectives from the public towards an event or a situation. In order to find this type of information, we can search social media applications, websites, and we can search the open web. In the example of Grumpy Cat, Tartar Sauce the cat had her photo taken and posted on Reddit in September of 2012, and she went viral on social media because of this Reddit post. She became known as Grumpy Cat, with many people using her image all over social media and in memes, and that's where it started. The next step in the information timeline is news. News reports take a little bit longer to produce because we expect journalists to take the time to collect factual information about the event. News reports are typically short, written for the general public, and this is when photographs start to happen, interviews with eyewitnesses happen, experts and authorities are interviewed as well, and we can usually find news reports on the open web, or sometimes they are going to be behind a paywall, but you can also access news articles from the library website as well. And I'll show you how to do that a little bit later in the presentation. In the case of Grumpy Cat, news stations and newspapers began reporting on Grumpy Cat shortly after she went viral. So after she went viral on social media is when the news reported on it. She made her first national news appearance in December of 2012 on NBC and made many more news appearances on CBS, BBC, and other news stations. Those were just a few that she was all over. The third stage of the information timeline is magazines and blogs. These types of resources begin to appear about a week or so after the event. Magazines and blogs take information from social media and news reports and interprets the current event. So it's not just factual information, there's some interpretation going on in these magazines and blog posts. These kinds of resources can be biased depending on the publication, the blog website, and the author. So there's definitely some bias you have to look out for with these interpretations of the event. Blogs can be found by searching the web, while magazines can be found in print or online. And if they are found online, they're usually behind a paywall. To avoid that, though, you can search magazines through the library website. We have subscriptions to lots of different magazines here at the Bell Library. So if you're looking for a specific magazine article, we might have access to it. And if we don't have access to it currently, we can get you access to it through our interlibrary loan services. Returning to our example of Grumpy Cat, in March of 2013, she was interviewed by Forbes magazine and on the cover of New York Magazine in October of 2013. These appearances were a few months after her initial news appearances. So we had social media first, then news, and now she's in magazines and blogs. The fourth stage of the information timeline is scholarly and peer-reviewed journal articles. Scholarly, like the word school, it just means the resource has an academic perspective. So think scholarly and school. The term peer-reviewed means that the article, term peer-reviewed means that each article in the journal was reviewed by experts in the field to make sure the information is accurate and important to the scholarly conversation. So it was reviewed by peer scholars in the field. That's what peer-reviewed means. This reviewing process, though, takes time. It takes a long time sometimes. And because of this, we start to see scholarly and peer-reviewed journal articles appear after an event, months after the event occurs. It can take even years after the event occurs for some of these articles to be published. The articles typically analyze events using research, and they build on conversations already being had by scholars. So the time to collect these resources, to write it, to review it, to sometimes rewrite certain parts, all of that takes time. So that's why they appear a few months after the initial event. And they're always typically found behind a paywall if they aren't an open access journal. So they're usually found through the best way to find these scholarly and peer-reviewed journal articles is through searching the library website, because we as a library pay for subscriptions to these journals, so you don't have to. You can also find some on Google Scholar as well, but sometimes there is a paywall on Google Scholar. And so if you're seeing the article on Google Scholar, I recommend you copy that title over and put it into the library search to see if we have access to the article as well. If you're not able to get access to the article, do not pay for the article, because we have interlibrary loan, like I mentioned before, and they will be able to get you a digital or physical copy of the resource. Scholarly and peer-reviewed journal articles can be both physical and digital resources. The images on the left-hand side are the same kind of content as the image on the right-hand side. So when you're searching for a journal article on the library website, you'll likely come across digital journal articles, what's on the right-hand side. But we want to show you that although they look different, it's the same type of content. Believe it or not, scholarly and peer-reviewed journal articles began to appear with Grumpy Cat in it starting in 2014. A few months after her magazine appearances is when this started to happen. So social media, then news, then magazines, and now scholarly and peer-reviewed journal articles. This is the first scholarly and peer-reviewed journal article that I could find with Grumpy Cat in it, and it's called Remixing, Reposting, and Reblogging Digital Media Theories in the Image of Copyright Law. So that's not a catchy headline that you might see in a magazine. You can tell there's more of a scholarly perspective to it, a more academic perspective to it. If we read the short summary of the article, also known as the abstract, so you can see the abstract right here under the PDF icon, you might notice that Grumpy Cat isn't explicitly mentioned, but we can see that the article is about memes. So if we read a little bit further, or we do a Control F or Command F if you're on Mac, we can see that Grumpy Cat is indeed mentioned in this article. So tartar sauce has become a part of this bigger conversation around the theories of the image and copyright law. So this article is from the journal Visual Communications Quarterly, Since this article, she's been written about in business, law, communications, linguistics, and philosophy journals, just to name a few, since 2014. The last stage of the information timeline includes books and ebooks. Books and ebooks take a year or more to publish. The audience can be for the general public or for scholars. Books and ebooks usually have the room to include a general overview of the topic or the event and provide an in-depth analysis of the event. When they have a bibliography, which usually scholarly books will because it was written for scholars, it usually is long because the author collected so much information. Books provide an in-depth analysis of the event, and all that takes time to write, edit, and publish. That's why it's the final stage of the information timeline. So books began to be published about Grumpy Cat around 2014, with some still being published today. Some are for the general public, like the Grumpy Guide to Life, which is on the left-hand side of the two images. And some might be for a more scholarly audience, such as a unified theories of cats on the internet. This is Grumpy Cat's journey through the information timeline, and I hope this example helped better understand how information travels through the timeline and how different audiences and perspectives and how each type of resource on the information timeline has different audiences and has a different perspective. And so now that we've walked through this with our example of Grumpy Cat, I want to give you an opportunity to practice this on your own. So we do have a few polls for you to check your understanding. So question number 1, you're having a beach day on North Padre Island when the person next to you catches a large tiger shark. What do? Do you A, tweet about it, or B, do you write a 20-page peer-reviewed article on the Journal of Fish Biology? We'll launch the poll right now. All right. I'm seeing lots of answers here. We'll share the results here in a moment. All right, can our moderator share the results, please? So for those who guessed A, tweet about it, you were correct. And that's a majority of us. We have 2 folks who would like to write a 20-page peer-reviewed journal article for the Journal of Fish Biology. And for that, I applaud you. We would tweet about it, so we can stop sharing the results. And this is because social media is the first step on the information timeline. We would tweet about it first, or we would post about it on social media. Information is created on social media within seconds, minutes, and hours of an event, while a scholarly article would likely take months to write and to go through that peer-reviewed process. So that would occur a little bit later in the information timeline. Great job, y'all. So question number 2, you're returning home from your day at the beach when you receive a Twitter DM from someone. They saw your post and want to interview you. Keeping in mind the information timeline, who is this person? Is it A, a scholar writing a book on tiger sharks, or B, a reporter from the local news? Who's contacting you after having seen your Twitter post? All right. Let's share our results again. For those who guessed A, a reporter from the local news, or no, not A, I'm so sorry. For those who guessed B, reporter from the local news, you are correct. Journalists typically begin to report on events around 24 hours after the event occurred. So it's in these news reports that journalists collect whatever facts they can and interview eyewitnesses, such as yourself. So this example actually happened. We can stop sharing the results. This example actually happened back in July of 2022, so this past July. Um, and then the next day, a news article came out. So this is an actual event that happened with the information timeline. All right, question number 3. So after this experience, you ask your professor if you could write about sharks in Texas for your upcoming biology report. You were really impacted by this event. This report requires at least one peer-reviewed article. Your professor responds with, A, that sounds like a great idea. You can look for peer-reviewed articles by using the search term elasmobranch or sharks in Texas on the library website. Elasmobranch is a technical word for sharks, so that's why they gave you that term. Or would your professor say, that sounds like a great idea. I know a great subreddit about sharks. What would your professor say? We're going to launch another poll. All right, let's share our results again. All right, for those who guessed A this time, you were correct. Our moderator can close the results now. You would want to look for peer-reviewed articles by using the search term elasmobranch or sharks and Texas on the library website. Peer-reviewed articles build on years of past research and are reviewed by scholars before they're published. Most journals are not searchable via Google or other web search tools. You can gain access to these peer-reviewed articles through the library website. In this image, we see the student has searched elasmobranches or sharks in quotation marks, and or is capitalized. That's because we're telling the search bar that we're looking for either elasmobranches or sharks. And then we also have the word and Texas because we want to make sure Texas is included in our resources. This person also checked the option on the left-hand side of peer-reviewed. So that means they're looking specifically for a peer-reviewed resource. So we're going to walk through this a little bit later in our demonstration, but I wanted to point out some of those things before we got into the demonstration so you can know to look for them when we do the demonstration. But congratulations, y'all. You did a fantastic job on answering those questions. And now that you understand the information timeline, you might be wondering, why is it important that I know this? How does this help me with my research project? Why does it matter? It matters because different formats of information give us different perspectives. If something happened a week ago, we know that we're not going to get a scholarly perspective on the event because it takes a long time to go through the peer-reviewed process. If something did happen a few months ago, we can guess that there may be 1 or 2 scholarly and peer-reviewed journal articles published on the event. If an event happened 10 years ago, we can assume that there might not be a lot about it on social media, but there might be some scholarly articles or books written about the event because so much time has passed. It also helps us understand that depending on our research question, some perspectives are going to be more valuable and suitable and credible than others. So knowing the information timeline helps us find a relevant perspective for our research project. And what do I mean by relevant perspectives? Depending on your research question, you may want to explore the perspective of scholars or the perspective of the public. And we're going to work through this with an example. So my research question is, how do sharks socialize with each other? How do sharks communicate with one another? How do they socialize with one another? And so I need to find resources about this topic. Which resource would be more relevant? Would it be A, a scholarly and peer-reviewed journal article about how lemon sharks interact with each other? Or would it be B, a post on the subreddit Sharks with a scuba diver swimming with a shark? Which perspective would be more relevant if my question is, how do sharks socialize with each other? All right, let's share the results. So majority of us said a scholarly and peer-reviewed journal article about how lemon sharks interact with each other would be the right answer, or would be a more relevant resource. And if you guessed A, you were correct. Great job. We want to learn from experts and scholars about how sharks communicate and socialize with one another. And so in this instance, a scholarly perspective would be more relevant or beneficial to our research question. But what if my research question is different? What if I want to know how shark enthusiasts socialize with each other? People who are interested in sharks, people who like sharks and want to form a community with people who also like sharks. How do they communicate with one another? Which of these two resources are going to be more relevant to this research question? Is it A, the same scholarly and peer-reviewed journal article about how lemon sharks interact with each other? Or is it going to be the post on the subreddit Sharks with shark enthusiasts communicating with each other and trying to learn more about these sharks? Which one is more relevant to the research question? All right. So this one we're getting a little bit more of a split answer. And this is what we're finding in all of these presentations so far, is that it seems to be split. So let's see what the answer is. Let's share the results first. So it says, so some of us think it's A, but 10 out of 17 of us think it's B. So let's see what the answer is. Let's stop sharing the results. So in this case, B, a post on the subreddit Sharks of a shark swimming with a scuba diver would be the more relevant resource for our research question. And let me tell you why. If our focus is on how people who are interested in sharks are communicating their interest and questions to one another, social media would be a great place to look and see those interactions in action. So I didn't say for this specific research question that I was required to have journal articles. I didn't say that I needed a specific type of resource. And so social media could be a valid place to look for this research question about how shark enthusiasts socialize with each other. So that is why we said B for this answer. But thank you all so much for participating, and I hope this was a little eye-opening for you as well. These questions, though, the first and second, how sharks socialize with each other and how shark enthusiasts socialize with each other, they require different perspectives. So in some cases, social media is going to be a more valuable place to look for our research than a scholarly journal article might be. In other cases, we're going to want that research from experts in the field to have that scholarly perspective. Other factors that impact relevancy, the instructions of your assignment is going to be one of them. So I clarified there that we didn't necessarily need peer-reviewed and scholarly research, peer-reviewed and scholarly journal articles for those two research questions, but maybe for your assignment you do. And so you're going to not want to look at social media. You need to kind of communicate with your instructors to see what types of resources are acceptable and what formats of resources you should stay away from. So that will impact how relevant how the information you find and the relevancy of that information. Also, when an article is written can impact the relevancy of a source. So for example, ocean temperatures can affect shark migration patterns if we're thinking of sharks still. And the ocean temperatures have changed in the past 20 years. And so research on shark migration patterns in 2022 are going to be more relevant than research from 2002. And so when an article is written also impacts the relevancy of that perspective. So now that we understand both the information timeline and the process in which different formats of information are created, and we understand the idea of relevancy a little bit better, we can start actually searching for information. And so we're going to do a quick demonstration for how to use the library quick search to find resources about the impacts of sharks on Texas. So let's go back to that those first few poll questions where we were writing, or we were asking our instructor if we could write our paper on the impact of sharks on Texas. So think back to that. And if you checked out a little bit before, now would be a really great time to start following along again. So, because we're going to go back to that original research question, what impact do sharks have on Texas? Our moderator is also going to share a link to the library website so you can follow along with me on your devices as well. I highly recommend you follow along. I am on the library website. Trisha just shared the library website link in the chat, but also if you type in tamucc.edu/library, you will get there. Another way you can find it is from the homepage of the university. If you go to academics, it's the last one under academics. You click library, you're there at the library homepage as well. So tamucc.edu/library, or you can find it under the academics tab on the university homepage. We're going to use this quick search bar here, and we're going to use it for our research question, what impact do sharks have on Texas? And so I'm going to use those search terms that my instructor told me to use, such as elasmobranch, which is the genus name of sharks, or the word shark. So I'm going to look for articles that mention either or. And so I want to put those in parentheses because elasmobranch and sharks are synonyms, and I want to keep synonyms together. They're the same in this instance. I also want to make sure Texas is mentioned in the resources that I find. So if I do capital AND, because the capitals let our search bar in the computer know that and isn't part of the search, it's a search connector. So we're connecting all of our search words together, kind of like plus and minus signs in math. So we're doing elasmobranch or sharks and Texas, because we want to make sure the resources that we find are specifically related to Texas. Then we're going to press search or enter on your keyboard, and we'll get some results. Some things to notice on our result page is that this content type section might be really useful for you, especially if we're thinking about the information timeline. So say you want a newspaper article or a journal article or a magazine article. We just talked about all three of those. And so if you want a specific type of information, you are able to select that. So you can select if you just want newspaper articles about sharks in Texas, or if you want magazine articles about sharks in Texas, you can click that as well. In this case, we need a peer-reviewed journal article because our assignment required that. So some other things we can focus on is this peer-reviewed checkbox. That's the word for it. On the left-hand side, if we click this, it only shows resources that are peer-reviewed. So we already know that these are going to be those resources that we want to use for our peer-reviewed resources for this project. If you want to be more specific, sometimes magazine articles books are marked as peer-reviewed as well. So if you want to ensure that you're looking specifically at a journal article, you can click journal article as well. One more thing to focus on, we did talk about how when something is published also affects how relevant it is. And so if we want to focus on something that's, a lot of instructors might say you want resources that have been published in the past 5 years, you can do that by publication date here on the bottom. So it's right underneath content type. And so you can say 5 years, 3 years, in the last year. You can also do a custom date range. So say you want it in the past 6 years, you can put that custom date range down as well. And so we can also clarify when we want our article or our resource to be published. So those are some things that I wanted to point out in the filter section. That helps narrow down our results. Before we had over 100,000 results to look through, and now we have about a little over 4,000 results to look through. And so that helps us find things that are more relevant and more narrowed to the types of resources that we need. So now we need to actually find a resource that we have now that we've narrowed down with the filters. One way you can do this is by looking at the titles of the resources that the quick search pulls up, and we can see that this article, for example, talks about elasmo branches and the Texas coast. And so I think that could potentially be relevant for my question. So if I want to take a little bit of a closer look, what I can do is click this quick look button underneath the journal cover, and it gives me the abstract. We mentioned earlier that the abstract is a summary of the research of the journal article. So before you read the full article, we can read this paragraph to understand whether or not this resource is going to be relevant to us. So if we read it a little bit closer, we can see that they're talking about estuaries for many fishes, including elasmo branches. And we can see that they're talking about inhabiting Texas estuaries specifically. So I think this is going to be relevant to my research question because it mentions elasmo branch and Texas in the search. So I want to save this for later. I'm not going to be reading all of my resources right now. I want to collect a few different titles and then read them a little bit deeper. So in order to save it, what we recommend doing is clicking this permanent link button or permalink. Sometimes it's called a stable link. Copying it over and then pasting it to whatever Word document you're keeping your notes in, whatever notes app you're keeping your notes in. However you're collecting your resources, using this permanent link is the best way to do that, because it means you'll be able to come back to that resource. Say we clicked into that resource. So I'm going to click into the resource now so you can see what it would look like. You'll see this really long URL, and this URL isn't stable. So if you're off campus and you try to open it, it might break. So in order to make sure that that link's not broken and that you can save that resource, that's why we recommend doing the permanent link option. Another thing you can do, many of you are asked to do a bibliography at the end of all of your research. And to do that, if you click the Cite This Item button right here, you can actually choose which citation style to cite this resource in. So say you need to do something in APA, you can click APA, and you can actually copy this over and save this for your bibliography as well. And so that's another way to make sure that you know what the title of the resource you're looking at is. So you can, I'm going to show that again because we've had some questions. So to do that, you're going to click the 2 quotation marks, cite this item. You're going to choose which citation style you want, APA. We have Chicago as well as MLA as well. I'm going to click APA for this demonstration. I'm going to copy it and then I can paste it to my Word document or to my bibliography. We do recommend double checking the formatting a little bit because it is computer generated, and so sometimes computers can make mistakes, but it's a lot easier to proofread something than it is to create a citation from scratch. And so that's another way you can collect your resources is by creating your bibliography that way. So now I have my first resource for this project, which is about the impact of sharks on Texas. So that is how we were able to find our first resource. But now that I've gone through that, it's time for you to find one on your own. So now that you've seen me walk through that search process of using the keywords and then using the filters on the left-hand side and then saving the permanent link. Now that you've seen me walk through that, you yourself need to find one more resource about the impact of sharks on Texas. As you mentioned before, you're going to search for the resource using the library website. You're going to just find one more resource and share what you found via the form that we're going to share in the link or share in the chat. We're going to share a link to the form in the chat. There we go. um, so our moderator just shared it now. And so we're going to be sticking around for the next few minutes as you're working through it. If you have any questions, feel free to, we'll stop the recording. So feel free, you can unmute yourself and ask, or you can ask directly in the chat. If you don't want to ask to everyone in the room, you can also send a direct chat to me or to Trisha, and we're happy to answer your questions as well, but omitting your name. And so right now, we ask that you find one more resource about the impact of sharks on Texas and use that form that Trisha just shared, the tamucc.co1 Qualtrics form. Use that to explain your thinking for the one more resource that you found. And I'm going to stop recording. And if you want me to demonstrate anything that we had walked through, feel free to let me know what you want me to demonstrate again. I'm happy to show you the steps again. So how do I stop recording? Stop recording, okay.